Alright guys, welcome back to another episode of Casting with Jay. Before I start today's video, I just want to take a minute to thank everyone that has watched the first video on the channel, subscribed to the YouTube channel, and who has followed and been liking the pictures on the Instagram page for the channel. I think we got right around 100 views on that first video, and I think we're at like 12 subscribers was the last time I checked. And then the Instagram page has like 30 followers and people have been liking the pictures, so for this channel just starting out, that's pretty crazy to me. Exceeded my expectations for sure just starting out, so just want to thank you guys for tuning in, getting interested in the fishing. If you're not subscribed already, I encourage you to do so, as content will be coming out, so thank you guys very much, and let's get into today's episode. Alright guys, so today's episode is going to be a spring / pre-spawn gear setup and kind of gear tactics and tutorials. So it's going to be what I like to use in the springtime to catch fish. These are just some of the things I like, or actually these are going to be the two most popular things I throw in the springtime to catch fish. So let's get right into it. So I'm going to be going over two different tactics, like a search bait tactic and then a more finesse style tactic when the bite is a little tough. And with each of those I'm going to be covering 4 different things. The bait I'm actually using, or the lure, the rod, the reel, and the line. So I guess we'll start with the bait and then everything else kind of follows suit after that. So first off, let's start with the search bait, or the more aggressive tactic. And what I like to use in the springtime, and a lot of people do too, is a jerkbait. Now I'm not too sure why a jerkbait is something, I mean you can throw it all year round, but especially in the spring it seems to work quite a bit. I've caught quite a bit of fish on this in the springtime. Pre-spawn, spawn stages, so this is something I kind of stand by for the springtime. Now, there's obviously different kinds you can get. The basic rule of thumb I like to follow is if the water is a little bit more clear, on the clear side, you got a lot of visibility, the sun's kind of shining through, fish can see a little ways away, I like to stick with more of a natural color. Your bluegill imitations, or just your natural greens and blacks and browns, things like that. This one has a little blade on it to give it a little flash, so if the sun's shining, reflect off that. Otherwise, if the bite, or if the water is a little dirtier, I like to stick with something that kind of stands out. This little blue and chartreuse, otherwise like a bone color or like a shiny chrome might be good too. But this is just the one I have. This is the one I use most often. Chartreuse seems to do pretty well. So if you're thinking about throwing something like a jerkbait, what are the rod, reel, and line combinations that you're going to need to be able to get the best action out of that bait? So we will start with the reel. I like to use a bait caster with some of the small ones, small jerkbaits. You can use a spinning rod or spinning reel, something like this. But for the ones I showed you guys, this is something I would use. This is just a low profile bait caster reel. I think it has 7 ball bearings, so it's fairly smooth. It's got a 7.1 to 1 gear ratio, so pretty fast, or middle of the road, pretty standard issue stuff. You can use that kind of speed on a lot of different things. But so that's the reel for this setup. And to be honest with you guys, the reel is actually the least important part when jerkbait fishing. All it really does is just, it's a way to keep your line coming in and keeping the line going while the bait's coming through the water. If that made any sense, I don't know if it did. But speaking of line is pretty important when it comes to jerkbait fishing. I like to use fluorocarbon because it does sink. so that allows the bait to kind of be like a nosedive when it goes through the water and lets it run a little deeper. And that's the main thing. Also, it has no stretch, so if a fish does hit your lure, you can really keep him pinned on that without having to worry about him throwing the lure if you have a lot of stretch in your line. So that's another thing I like about fluorocarbon. You can get away with braid. I wouldn't use monofilament though, because it floats, so it's going to take away from the diving action of the jerkbait. And I do have 20-pound test on here if I'm fishing around brush, logs, docks. I like to have the extra strength in my line and in my knots too. So now on to the most important part of jerkbait fishing, and that is going to be the rod here. The whole action of the jerkbait comes from the rod and just twitching it downwards towards you if you're on the boat or on the bank. So what you're looking for in a rod is going to be, this is a 7-foot, I'd say anything 7 foot to 7'2", gives you that casting ability. It's a little bit longer, like a 6.5 foot or something like that. This is a medium heavy, so it does have a pretty stiff backbone, but it's a fast action tip, and that's the most important part. So I don't know if you guys can see, but the tip has a lot of flex. That's where most of the flex is in the rod, and so when you're twitching it down, that's what's going to give the jerkbait its action to flicker back and forth, because it kind of darts back and forth like that. And having the extra flex too lets you get a good cast out there, good long cast. So that's this rod and reel and line set up for a jerkbait, and that's something I would stand by all year round pretty much, just because jerkbait fishing is such a specific type and it's such a specific way to fish it. So yeah, that's what I would use for jerkbait fishing. And now let's get into my other favorite springtime lure, and that is on the finesse style of baits. Alright, so if the fish aren't biting the jerkbait or whatever other moving bait, if they're kind of still in their winter stage, they're pretty lethargic, not wanting to chase down baits, not wanting to eat anything, or if they're starting to spawn and have made a bed up shallow, and you're just looking to get a reaction strike rather than them actually trying to eat it for food, I think my favorite thing to throw would be just a little shaky head here. So it's just a jig head with a round bend worm hook attached to it. They come in different kinds. This one a little bit different. It has a flat top there so it can sit on the bottom. But this one I like particularly because it has this bait keeper here, which is a little coiled spring, and you can twist the bait onto there, help it keep it from sliding off. So that's why I like this one probably the most. But so yeah, when you got your worm on there, everything's straight, but when it's in the water, this part, the tail floats, and with this kind of plasma tail, it just kind of kicks back and forth, and that seems to be something that drive bass absolutely crazy. So that's a pretty good tactic if the bite is tough and the fish aren't wanting to chase after something like a jerkbait or a lipless crankbait or something like that. This would be something I would go to. This works wonders in rocks because it does have that round head, so it can kind of move and flex around on the rocks as you drag it along the bottom. So if you're going to use something like this, what would we want for our rod, our reel, and our line? So for something like that, any finesse tactic, I would be using a spinning reel. And this is a Lew's Mach 1 speed spinning reel. That was a mouthful. This is a 6.2 to 1 gear ratio. It's pretty fast. It has 10 ball bearings, so very smooth on the retrieve. And then I just have this spooled up with 10-pound fluorocarbon, so same as the bait casting reel. But this fluorocarbon comes into particular use when you're doing finesse fishing, because it is nearly invisible in the water. it sinks, so it helps the bait get down there a little faster, which in this case for a shaky head helps it kind of glide down the water column, and that's a lot of times when the bass will hit it is on the way down on the drop. And also fluorocarbon doesn't have stretch, so you're able to feel like a soft bite on the line. So that's something to look forward to when you're using fluorocarbon. You get all those advantages. So now that's, again, the reel's not too important, but I do have this paired up with a Lew's for the rod. It's a Lew's TP1 Speed Stick, Tournament Performance Speed Stick. It is a 6'9", medium, light, and a fast action rod. So you still get nice backbone, but it does start to curve a little bit sooner than the bait casting rod. But this tip is extra flexible. So this rod is designed specifically for shaky heads, drop shots, wacky ringing, all sorts of finesse tactics. But with that fast tip, lets you feel and see the bites if you're getting a real subtle, if they're just kind of nipping at it a little bit. So yeah, I'd have that paired up with that spinning reel and the shaky head, and then the 10-pound fluorocarbon line. Alright guys, so that's going to conclude today's video with the gear setup for springtime. Those are just a few options. If you guys want me to go in more detail about any facets of this video, whether it be the lure, the rod, the reel, the line, anything like that, let me know in the comments below, and I can do another video going more in depth. This was just kind of a quick overview of the whole setup of each of those styles of fishing. So that's going to conclude this video. Make sure you guys subscribe and like this video, help grow the channel, help motivate me to make more videos. And then be sure to be on the lookout for the next video. I think I'm going to do some late season ice fishing, so stay tuned for that. I know I haven't done much fishing yet on this channel, but we'll get there, I promise. So thanks guys for watching. Stay tuned for the next episode of Casting with Jay.